Bull,
Oh, wait. I'm sorry. I have to say it now. I love you.
Oh, baby. Oh, yeah. Of course you love me. Who wouldn't after this jackhammering?
Oh my god. It's just... How the hell did we get here, man? So if you haven't figured it out by now, I've been on something of a fixed kick lately. After the drama surrounding it and the undeserved hit it got as a result of Netflix being their usual selves, I thought it might do diligence to promote the film and show people how there's more thought put into it than you would expect. In spite of its raunchiness, it's a well-written and surprisingly wholesome story with themes regarding self-esteem, toxic masculinity, and how to appreciate the little things in life instead of obsessing over one thing. Though there's one aspect of the movie I feel like I haven't really delved into yet. Its cast of characters. On a surface level, they seem really tropish and cliche. You got the everyman with a crush on his best friend, the girl next door, the tough talker, the nut job, the nerdy mama's boy, the jerkass, the slutty one. All of these characters sound really generic on a surface level, but in spite of this, there's actually a lot of nice things to say about them. Not just their chemistry with each other, but how they act independently. Most of them have really compelling character arcs that align with the movie's overall message, and they have really good and committed voice actors breathing life into them. They're never annoying, they never have too much screen time, and the movie is able to break up each of their stories in a way that prevents it from feeling overcrowded. So I figured, why not? I'm just gonna make a video ranking the main characters of Fixed in my attempt to promote the movie some more. In spite of how tropish they may seem on a surface level, I want to try and figure out how much more depth they have when you look past the raunchiness. Maybe they'll end up being more complex than I previously thought. Or maybe they're just a bunch of horn dogs, who knows. Now when I say the main characters, I mean the ones who actually play some sort of role in the plot. Obviously I'm not gonna go over every single dog because then I would have to make a segment dedicated to Honey's friends at the end. And really, what is there to say about them? Except for spraying honey on a bear. So let's get this count up started. How do the characters of Fixed really fare? Let's find out.
I'm only human, after all, don't put your blame on me.
One thing I've been meaning to bring up about Fixed but haven't had a chance to is how it handles the presence of humans in the movie. I couldn't really talk about them since they're not exactly characters. They're more of an element that plays into the atmosphere of the film's world. And since they're not technically characters in the narrative, I can't officially rank them in this list. But I still want to talk about them for their interesting role in the story, so the least I can do is give them an honorable mention. In my ranking of the Disney live-action remakes, I talked about one of the things that made Lady and the Tramp unique as a movie focusing on dogs. We never see the faces of the majority of the human characters, and most of the time we only see their lower bodies or up to their legs. This was meant to establish the events of the movie from the point of view of the dogs. This is how they see the world around them, and it allows the writers to focus on their characteristics. Fixed does something similar with its premise. The movie is focused on the dogs, so it makes the humans more of an element in the atmosphere, never showing their faces to the viewer. This is a really interesting use of the dog's owners because it allows them to be in the story without taking us out of the dog's world. It's a very good visual technique because it keeps the focus on the perspective of the dogs, and in spite of never showing their faces, they still manage to get some personality across. They still have scenes with them interacting with the dogs to establish the bond they have with their pets. There's this one I really like between Bull and his, maybe let's call him his adopted father, as he finds out about his impending neutering. His adopted dad tries to cheer him up, but Bull only feels a sense of betrayal. The body language shows a sense of regret and hesitation he feels about the situation. Like you understand why Bull is getting neutered, but he still feels bad about it since he recognizes the sadness Bull is going through. Stuff like this helps to establish a connection between Bull and his owners, and how they still care about each other in spite of Bull not being able to understand the intent behind losing his nuts. Like I said before, they're not really characters, so I can't really rank them here. But it's an element of the movie I wanted to talk about, so I figured I might as well do it here. It's simply an interesting use of the human characters that's worth noting.
You're a whore! A filthy, filthy whore!
Molassa serves literally no purpose in the story except act as the cog for Bull and Honey's misunderstanding. Like, I cannot emphasize enough just how much of a non-entity she is in the grander scheme. She wants to have sex with Bull, she seduces him, and then she just leaves. She never appears again for the rest of the movie. I really detest these type of characters who have no personality beyond the singular trait and do nothing except instigate a conflict between the other characters. It feels like a cheap gimmick and an excuse to enforce a third act breakup. She doesn't even have a personality to speak of. She's just slutty for the sake of being slutty. The most I can say is that her contrast with Bull can be used to explain how to implement a healthy mindset into sex, or how relationships can help make sex more meaningful beyond surface level pleasure, but aside from that, she is a nothing character. You could have easily replaced her with anyone else at the Hump House and it would change nothing. She only exists in this movie to be furry bait, nothing more and nothing less. And if you ask me, she is definitely a hard pass.
Hit like and subscribe for a cookie.
Like and subscribe or I will murder your family.
I'm sorry, but Fetch just didn't really do that much for me. He's cute and all, but he doesn't really stand out like the other characters. Other members of the pack have more of a personality or go through more of an arc. Fetch doesn't really have much of either. He just acts more human than dog by walking on two legs and dressing up in clothes for media attention, which sort of just gets old after a while. His dilemma regarding his identity as a dog doesn't even happen until the last 20 minutes of the movie, and he just gets over it in about 3 minutes. I can't even think of anything he offers to the group besides just being the nerdy one, and he doesn't really add anything to the story. It feels like he's just along for the ride. The other dog characters have more to say about them, but Fetch is kinda just there. Not much I can say except he's just a nerdy mama's boy.
Cat got your tongue?
In spite of playing a relatively minor role in the story, the cats actually serve more of a purpose than, say, Molassa. They're the only antagonistic force in the movie besides Sterling, and they're actually more villainous given their sinister demeanor. The scene in the alleyway is actually pretty effective in making them look creepy, with the bleak green hues and the moment of slow silent build-up leading up to their attack on the dogs. They also have some pretty good jokes based on visual timing and expression, so in that regard they're actually pretty entertaining, and they do appear again later in the movie for a pretty funny payoff. You'd think Fetch would do that whole showing mercy to your enemies thing, but nope, he just leaves them in the pound. That is such a dickish thing to do, yet really funny. The villainous cats are mild but still enjoyable characters. Menacing, creepy, and even pretty funny. It may not be a lot, but hey, at least it's something.
The balls are gone!
Although he isn't in the movie for very long, Luther actually leaves a pretty good impression. He serves as a window for the stress that Bo will be going through after he learns about his neutering and the effects it has on a dog. And you end up feeling for his situation because they show how much turmoil is placed on him, especially getting backstabbed by someone who only used his friendship to feel better about his stature and manhood. But honestly, the real reason I like him so much is the last word he gets against Sterling at the end of the film. The delivery of that line combined with the cathartic facial expression is just everything. Karma is indeed a bitch, and you can tell how satisfying it is with that smug look on his face as Sterling gets dragged away. It's a really funny payoff for his first scene in the beginning, and it also gives his character a sound and satisfying conclusion. Honestly, if the movie just cut to credits here and didn't do that whole nonsense with the bear at the hump house, it would have been the perfect final scene, ending on a note of sweet karma. In spite of being a one-shot character, Luther is actually pretty fun for the amount of time he was given, and his revenge against Sterling was a dish both cold and sweet.
Is nothing I do good enough for you, mother?
At first I didn't think Rocco would add up to that much given how stereotypical his demeanor is. He's mostly just the tough-talking guy in the group who swears a lot, but over the course of the movie they show that there's more to his character than just that. He's actually really expressive, with a lot of outgoing charm to his body language and faces. He's also a very supportive companion towards Bull, giving him genuine advice and helping him out and enjoying himself. Yeah, him talking Bull into moving on from Honey was a bit of a dick move, but when you only got one night left with your nuts, you just gotta make the most of it. He also has his own arc that's surprisingly effective for his character, dealing with inadequacy issues due to not getting enough nurturing from his mother while he was a pup. It has a strong effect on his self-esteem, making him act overly defensive, so his tough-talking attitude is actually a coping mechanism. He sees himself as less of a dog because he was neglected, and he has difficulty dealing with the deep-seated trauma, but in the end he learns to cope with his childhood and realize that not getting breastfed doesn't make him less of a dog, because he's still a supportive bro and uncle to Bull and his pups, though we don't really see how he overcomes this. It sort of just happens off-screen, probably during that 3-month time skip, which is admittedly disappointing. It makes the resolution for his character arc come across as rushed and not as satisfying as it could have been. But still, Rocco is a cool and fun doggo, showing how underneath that tough demeanor is just a guy trying to cope with his mommy issues. I mean, come on, we've all gone through that at some point.
You're a douche, you're a douche, you're a big fizzy douche.
Sterling is one of those characters that you love to hate. Like, every time he's on screen, you're just waiting for the other characters to rip into him for being a self-centered douche. And by God is it fun to watch. He is so enjoyably smug and stuck up, and the way he bounces off the other characters is brilliant, just pushing his ego and superiority into their faces while they think of creative ways to throw it back at him. Technically, I shouldn't like him so much because of how one-note and cliche he is, but he actually has a creative way of projecting himself onto others. The movie establishes his ego stemming from his upbringing as a purebred show dog, so it feels logical for his character to behave that way, and the level of self-absorption going on in this guy's brain is practically through the roof. He is so full of himself that he feels the need to do like 20 different stretches before engaging in intercourse, all while bragging about how great he is to Honey while she just wants him to shut up. And that bit where he's so caught up in how awesome he is that he can't even tell he's pounding Bull instead of her, while still somehow finding a way to glaze himself is just... it's just too much. I like him, I'm sorry. I wouldn't call him a villain as he doesn't really do anything villainous, but he is an effective antagonist as Bull's rival for Honey's affection. He's one of the obstacles presented to Bull as something he needs to overcome to improve his self-esteem. and it works as a really good contrast between the two having different ways of interpreting their manhood. It also helps to establish why Honey would love someone like Bull over Sterling, because perfection isn't what she wants. She wants someone to love her for who she is. And of course, there's the incredibly satisfying bit of karma at the end. After all the time this guy spent putting others down, it was such a terrific payoff seeing him fight against his fate to no avail. All those crazy expressions he displays when he realizes what's about to happen to him makes it so much more funny and enjoyable, paired up with Luther getting the last word in. I really didn't think I'd like this guy so much, but with the unmatched size of his ego combined with Beck Bennett's snooty voice acting, Sterling really was an entertaining punching bag by the end. He may be a douche, but he's a douche that you love to hate.
Are you a boy or a girl?
Both. Both is good.
The last thing I expected from this movie was for it to have any sort of representation for intersex people, let alone good representation for intersex people. With this being a raunchy animated R-rated comedy where the premise revolves around dogs acting horny, this is something that could have so easily just been treated as an excuse for tasteless jokes. But I have to give my utmost respect to Gendy for treating this topic with dignity, not just through Frankie themselves, but also through their relationship with Lucky. They're very soft-spoken and poetic, having a keen mind while spending time with him. They act as a very sound mentor, helping Lucky to confront and better understand his self-esteem issues. And what makes it so interesting is that they're speaking from experience. Frankie mentioned struggling to accept yourself and loving yourself, which given their situation actually hits pretty hard. Spending their whole life being denied love or acceptance from others because they had no control over the way they were born, just wanting to find someone to accept them for who they are. It's implied pretty heavily that they've been dealing with these emotions for a long time. But no matter how hard things got for them, they kept pushing forward, and it paid off because they finally found someone to accept and love them. And there's no dumb catch to this scene at all. The two of them just talk, expressing their feelings and opening up to each other. It's practically the most normal conversation in the movie. In spite of Frankie's wild side, they managed to remain very wise and sophisticated, focusing on the deep interpersonal side of relationships that make sex more meaningful beyond surface level pleasure. They feel like a real person instead of just a caricature. I honestly wish they had more screen time. In spite of not being in the movie for very long, their relationship with Lucky was one of the most enriching elements. It was a lot of fun seeing the two hitting it off and ending up together, and it's also a very dignified portrayal of the subject matter. If anything, people should watch this movie if only for this character, because Frankie really is that well written, a loving partner, a wise mentor, and they're not afraid to get freaky. Honey is almost everything I want in a love interest for the main protagonist. She's full of personality, she has her own compelling character arc, she has a heavily established and detailed relationship with Bull to make their romance more earnest, she's really expressive, she's a fighter who can handle herself, she has a lot of fun chemistry with the other characters, and she's such a sweetheart to Bull throughout the movie. Or almost throughout. Her crush on him never gets too foamed in, and she has a lot of fun interactions with him besides just teasing him. Acting like doofuses together, exchanging normal conversations, talking about their interests, being playful with each other, they actually feel like best friends who have known each other since childhood. I also really like the way she contrasts with Sterling. In spite of being a purebred show dog, she never behaves snooty or privileged. She's actually very fun-loving and raunchy and wants to outwardly express that side of her more. She does take some pride in being a purebred show dog, but she also shows signs of wanting more, like wanting to be with Bull and being in touch with her wild side. She also learns how to not pride herself in being perfect, as it just keeps her from embracing the things that make her more unique and different, which is something that helps her to relate to Bull and his friends. Not wanting to be like everyone else, but just wanting to be true to herself. We see her having self-esteem issues and doubts of her own as she wants to be with Bull, but is worried he won't love her back due to their differences. It helps to show how genuine her relationship with Bull is. They both have feelings for each other from the start and want to build up the courage to confess their love, but the social class they were raised in makes it difficult for them to overcome their fears. But after she learns from Bull to be true to herself, she feels a new resolve and embraces that side of her more openly. And it's also really sweet how she reciprocates the lesson she learned from him, to not embrace what you have outside but what you feel inside, because that's what always drew them to each other in spite of their differences. And it's really rewarding seeing her finally get to embrace that more wild side she was forced to bottle up for so long, even if the ending had a really weird way of showing it. She's finally allowed to be a free spirit, unbound by the life of a purebred show dog. The only real problem I have with her character is how some of the more important aspects of her story happen off screen. Like she just randomly shows up at the hump house with no build-up, specifically so that dumb misunderstanding can occur. Like, have a scene where she's shown tracking them down or give more leadway into her heartbreak. She mentions having a lot of negative experiences with other males, which would explain why she felt betrayed by seeing Bull with Molassa, but it's just a line of dialogue that's never explored further. I do feel like this scene could have benefited from better build-up or more time seeing things from Honey's perspective. It's just really lame and forced for the sake of a third act breakup. But still, Honey was really funny and compelling. I didn't think she'd end up being more than just the love interest, but she manages to be a pretty well-rounded character. She's sweet, expressive, and the perfect match for Bull. Two raunchy lovers under one starry sky.
Why would you agree to suck someone's balls?
Lucky has no business being this much fun and compelling. Him being one of the best characters really feels like something that shouldn't be possible. Like, this character's introduction is literally him chewing on a cat turd, and somehow he manages to be among the most fleshed out characters with the most satisfactory arcs in the whole movie. In spite of being a moron and the oddball of the group, he's actually a really deep thinker. He can be surprisingly smart and aware of his surroundings, even if it's not expected of him by the others. There's a proper blend between moments of him acting dumb and moments of him being more down to earth and relatable, so it never feels like he's acting out of character. In fact, it's established pretty early on how aware he is of what's going on around him, like when he tries to comfort Luther after his neutering. He has genuine emotion and chemistry with Bull's pack, being supportive of them even if he's not always in the right mindset when doing so. And his relationship with Frankie helps us delve into more of his struggles and how he really views himself. Opening himself up and being emotionally vulnerable is actually pretty surprising because he doesn't normally get this level-headed. It could be that acting like a dork all the time is some sort of coping mechanism for hiding his emotional vulnerabilities, or not having enough wisdom to deal with it by himself, feeling lost all the time and trying to find yourself in all the things you do. And it's genuinely sweet that he finds someone to relate to and even share these emotions with. Plus, he really is that funny. He has some of the best jokes out of anyone in the cast. Wacky antics, crazy expressions, perfectly delivered lines, bombastic body language. He's just an entertaining treat every time he makes an appearance. I'm actually really happy that Lucky turned out as good as he did. In these types of movies, the comic relief is usually so insufferable and obnoxious, but Lucky stands out from the crowd by actually being good. He has well-rounded comedic timing that isn't oversaturated, and he has an intriguing character arc where he undergoes satisfying development without it feeling forced. It's like he's secretly the secondary protagonist of the movie, which is way more than I've seen a lot of other adult animated comedies do with the wacky sidekick. He's actually well-written and dignified on top of being funny, and that's exactly what you want out of a comic relief character. We really need more of this, and less of this. Yeah, I said it, Fixed has a better comic relief character than a big-budget Disney product, and that's really, really sad.
I'm taking my balls and leaving.
I get that it's really gimmicky to say the main protagonist was the best character, but I just don't think that anyone in Fixed has as much of a compelling arc, or had as much profound development as Bull. On a surface level, he seems like the usual everyman or just someone who messes around with his friends. But with the way everything in the movie plays out, Bull ends up being a lot more nuanced than that. Throughout the movie, they show how a lot of his confidence and self-esteem comes from his balls, and how he prides himself in being a full-fledged dog by having them. It can result in him having a bit of an ego, but he never comes from a place of malice or wanting to put others down like Sterling does. He even stands up for Luther and Rocco while coming up with fun ways to roast him. There's actually a nice mix of personality traits to his character. He's witty, snarky, mischievous, raunchy, poetic, smooth-talking, soft-spoken, a hopeless romantic. He even manages to be pretty smart as he comes up with some clever, if pretty disgusting escape plans. It's actually pretty refreshing seeing this much variety from the main protagonist of a raunchy adult comedy, giving us a lot of things to gravitate to and helping us feel endeared to him. But his world starts to fall apart when he learns about his imminent neutering. Because of how much inspiration and confidence they gave him, he's understandably panicked about losing them, so his anxiety has a legitimacy to it. It does cause him to lash out at others, but he's also willing to display humility and apologize for his mistake. This is actually one of the movie's benefits from having good pacing. It slows down and allows Bull to chill and feel things, so when an emotional scene occurs, it manages to be effective. One of the biggest appeals to Bull is that compared to a lot of other main characters from raunchy adult animated comedies, he's actually a good person with compelling motivations. He's not motivated by sex. He's motivated by the self-worth he places in his balls while genuinely caring about Honey. He's not the stereotypical asshole you usually see in adult animation, and his character arc is very well executed and relatable. The main lesson he has to learn is how to see the true value in himself and how Honey loves him for who he is and not because he has balls. His whole life has been centered around the confidence they gave him, so living life without them is something he never considered. He goes through the motions of grief, coming to terms with what will happen in the end, but also making the most of his remaining time with them, just living life to its fullest. His relationship with Honey is also deeply genuine. Every action he takes in the story reinforces his commitment to her, even willing to give her up so she can be happy happy, and he's also willing to sacrifice his pride, saving her from procreating with Sterling by offering himself to him. And in the end, his commitment and dedication to her pays off as they finally work up the courage to confess their love for each other. But even so, Bull still isn't sure what life will be like after he loses his jewels or if he'll ever get used to it. But with Honey's help, he learns to see the value in himself, and how his characteristics came not from his balls, but from his relationships with his friends and loved ones. And so, Bull finally feels ready to go with the procedure. In the end, he learns that it's okay to let certain things go, and how to appreciate the little things in life that make it worth living. And even if things won't be like how they once were, you can still be true to yourself. There's actually a nice little detail in the ending you may not notice during a first viewing. Just before Bull goes under for his operation, you can actually see a smile creeping up on his face, showing how he's accepted the neutering he's been dreading throughout the movie. It's an incredible detail that perfectly summarizes his character progression. He's ready to move on and enter a new stage in his life. Although he loses something physically, he gains something new that makes him feel whole in a completely different manner. Bull is just a really wholesome character and surprisingly charming given the adult nature of the overall movie, and I really have to applaud Gendy for handling his story with such dignity and depth. He's relatable, he's adorable, he's likable, he's an amazing boyfriend turned husband and father. His story is the core of Fixed, and the way it's executed makes it so much fun to watch. I guess it goes to show that great things really can come in small packages. So with that said, Fixed has a pretty endearing cast of characters when you look past them on a surface level, at least most of them. They really make the movie a fun experience and have solidified it as one of Gendy Tartakovsky's most underappreciated works. So will there be more to say about it in the future? Well, I hope so, but it probably won't be from me. I've already gone over pretty much everything that can be gone over at this point, so another video on it is extremely unlikely. I do wish that it got more attention and viewership, and it's a real shame that it seems to have disappeared into obscurity in a short amount of time. There was a lot of genuine care put into it, from its story to its themes to its character writing. When Gendy says this was the passion project he always wanted to make, I really believe it, because he really put so much thought into it while making it more down to earth compared to some of his other more exaggerated works. It's a simple movie about interpersonal relationships and just appreciating the little things in life, which is pretty laid back and relaxed from what you'd usually expect from him. But that's actually a good thing, as it makes Fixed one of his most unique works. It's not a fantasy epic or an action-packed drama. It's a romantic comedy, one with a casual tone and characters that feel more grounded and realistic. Hopefully in the future it'll get some sort of cult following and get more people talking about it, noticing the authentic effort that was put into it. But for now, all we can do is appreciate Fixed for what it is. A lesson in how sometimes you really can't judge a book by its cover, or in this case, a movie from its trailer.